Tiger. You just hit the jackpot.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. TFG and Mike here from the Geekcast Radio Network. Before you hear episode 330 of The Pull Bag, just wanted to let you know JT from Saskatoon and I recorded this before Stan Lee's death. And so we dedicate this episode of The Pull Bag covering the final arc of the Superior Spider-Man run by Dan Slott to the memory of Stan Lee. He will be sorely missed. He's someone who, with great power and great responsibility, gave us thousands upon millions of hours of imagination, entertainment, comics, television, movies, all that cool stuff, and Stan the man himself was just awesome. I never got to meet him, but he still had an impact on my life, and I hope you guys enjoy episode 330 of The Pull Bag with Superior Spider-Man, the Goblin War of Nations.
Hi, this is John Semper Jr., the head writer and producer of Spider-Man the Animated Series, and you are listening to the Geekcast Radio Network.
You've just jumped inside The Pull Bag. Join TFG1 Mike and the rest of the comic reading crew here at the GCRN as they make their great escape into comics. From DC, Marvel, IDW, Boom Studios, Zenescope, and more, we have everything you want to read right here. Transformers comics? Yeah, we cover that. He-Man? Yeah, sure. DC superheroes like Batman, Batgirl, Nightwing, and Batman Beyond? Yep, we have those too. How about TMNT from IDW and I Hate Fairyland from Image Comics? Yeah, we have all that here. Plus, so much more. It's all inside The Pull Bag here on the Geekcast Radio Network. So without any further ado, it's time to talk about the comics we are reading right now here inside The Pull Bag.
New York City. If only everything down there was really as peaceful as it looks from up here.
Hello and welcome to episode 330 of The Pull Bag. I am, of course, TFG and Mike. Joining me is JT from Saskatoon, who has an unhealthy something for the 2016 Ghostbusters film. I don't know what. But folks, we are in the way back machine. Talk to Mr. Peabody, talk to Sherman, talk to Rocky and Bullwinkle or Doc Brown or something from March 13th, 2013 to March 19th, 2014. JT and I had talked almost at that point in time every single issue of the Superior Spider-Man from Marvel Comics that had come out to that point. We stopped doing it around issue 25, and then March 19th of 2014 we had done the Marvelous March Spotlight, where we talked about Spider-Man, the Black Cat story, volume whatever it is, and then Spider-Man Blue. Return of the Black Cat, that's what it is. So we talked about Spider-Man Blue and Return of the Black Cat. So it's been a while since we've done some Marvel stuff on the Pull Bag, a number of years actually. And I figured, oh hey, why not get back into it, kind of a thing. And we're going to pick up where we left off, which was Superior Spider-Man issue 26. What we're covering in this episode is issue 26 and then volume 6, Goblin Nation, which is issues 27 to 31. We are not covering 32 and 33 because those are a part of Spider-Verse, and Spider-Verse is going to be a whole other thing on the podcast at some point as soon as I get some money. So, yes. How are you, sir?
I'm doing well.
Yes, we gave you a 1-week reprieve, folks, of listening to JT, because last week we talked about a Boom Studios WWE Volume 3 Roman Empire with Ryan the Uneven Flow Merkley. But JT is back this week. We are returning to our roots, back to Superior Spider-Man. I have not picked any of this stuff back up since we stopped, and I had to look at several different websites, not only reading the issues, but just to catch up with where the hell we left off. Because I'm
it's a little nutsy cuckoo after this series.
Well, okay, so we should have done issues 22 through 26, but I don't think at the time that we did that episode, 22 to 25, I don't think issue 26 had been released yet. And issue 26 is basically the end of that arc, because 27 to 31 is the Goblin Nation arc. Technically, I guess this is the Goblin Prelude or something, or whatever.
It's a prologue of sorts.
Yeah. I was hoping to see somewhere on the thing here, like the story thing, where it's like, hey, this is, Goblin Prelude or whatever. And wow, I'm just gonna say right now, when we get to Volume 6, Goblin Nation, I kind of love the ending that they gave this. I was not, I remember being so up in arms about them ending Superior Spider-Man just because a new fucking movie was coming. Because at that time, Amazing One with the guy from
Garfield.
From Social Network, not Lex Luthor, the other guy.
Andrew Garfield.
Yes. His movie was about to come out, so they're like, oh, well, we got to end this. And I felt like they had to end it just because the movie came out, and that's probably what they had to do, and they did it and whatever. But I had not read the rest of this at that time. I had not finished reading this. So I'm like, oh, how the hell are you just going to bring Peter back? What are you going to do? How are you going to get that done? Don't do that. But after reading this, X number of years later, I'm like, oh, the story makes sense, and it's a great, great story.
Yeah, it builds on everything that Dan Slott has done, because at this point, this is like year 5 or 6 of his 10-year run.
Yeah.
Of writing Spider-Man stories, which of recent memory, the only other guy that I know has put in this amount of time on Batman or works for the Distinguished Competition, that being Jeff Johns and Scott Snyder, who spent Johns was at least 10 years on Green Lanterns, Snyder's almost that on Batman.
Yeah.
For everything that he did. But yeah, no, this is honestly it's up there. I haven't sat down and made a top 10 list of favorite Spider-Man story arcs, but this is top 15, maybe top 10. But yeah, it is built on everything Stan Slott did. It brought everything to a pretty satisfying conclusion, and it's just a lot of fun, which, as we talked about off mic, a lot of fans don't seem to take into account anymore. Can you enjoy the title without, wallowing into self-pity and whatnot in regards to creators' opinions and whatnot? You can? Well, great. Let us be friends.
So issue 26 starts off with Green and Hobgoblin doing their thing, facing off against each other. I need to run down really quick before I forget about it. The creative on this, as you said, Slott on writing, Ramos, Rodriguez, and Martin on pencils. Dialzaba, Lopez, and Martin on inks. Delgado, Rodriguez, and Martin on colors. Letters is done by Chris Elpoulos. I'm probably butchering that name, but yeah, I love the art in this. I think it's so fun and so cool. The goblins, I don't know. I'm not too sold on these first few pages in issue 26 with Green and Hobgoblin. I don't know if it's the close-ups. I don't know if it's the weird... I don't know. It's just the goblins seem like they're off. There's a panel where Green says, and for a good reason, and Hobgoblin says, which is, the spider has one. Seeing the two of them up next to each other, yes, they are two very different characters. They're supposed to be two very different designs. But one looks like a young man and one looks like an old man. And it just doesn't, I don't know, just doesn't look right to me.
Yeah.
Oh.
I mean, I like the cover myself. I mean, it's two of the greatest Spider-Man villains of all time, although it's either, and both versions of the Hobgoblin are in this issue, Roderick Kingsley and Phil Urich.
Mm-hmm.
So it's you don't know who it is, but we get into it, and I mean, for longtime Spider-Man readers, like they have the whole Liz Osborn taking over Oscorp and turning it into Alchemax, which is the evil super conglomerate from the future of Marvel 2099 in the Spider-Man 2099 title, which, oh my God, it's all coming true.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and we get into, and there's basically a mini Goblin War going on, and this is also right around the time of I forget if this is a couple of years prior, just after Avengers X-Men Axis.
I think it was just after it, yeah.
Yeah, something like that. But because right away you see Roderick Kingsley, a free franchise for life. Anyone who helps me kill Yorick, this little traitor. Because they had brought back Roderick Kingsley as the true proper Hobgoblin, and he's selling supervillain franchises to whoever ponies up the dough, so you could become like the new Unicorn or the new Grizzly, and that's how he's making his ill-gotten gains. And Phil has become, I think at this point he was being called the Goblin King, and had fallen under sway of Osborn, who was building this goblin army in the sewers of New York City. You see like the Goblin graffiti tag all over, and guys are getting that tattoo, and it's becoming like this subculture and a whole lot of insanity. Mm-hmm. And then Norman calls a timeout.
Yep.
And a Hobgoblin's like, the hell? You can't call a timeout.
Exactly.
And the look Ramos gives Hobgoblin's face when he says, you can't call a timeout, that just reminded me of A League of Their Own. There's no crying in baseball.
That's right, yep.
So
we have three main stories in this issue. We've got the Goblin stuff, we've got Doc Ock Spidey versus the Avengers, and then we've got Peter and the Mindscape.
Yeah. And I should say, looking at the art, like where Otto is leading his spider minions against the forces of AIM, and you know, I love the incredulous dialogue from the AIM leaders. Impossible. How did you know of our shipment? Our tanker was stealth shielded. Mm-hmm. And Spider-Man's like, you fool. And then the Avengers bust in. You can see Iron Man's wearing that black and gold armor that he wore for a time, and that happened before Axis. So this definitely happens before Axis, I would say. Mm. But we get Captain America in the awesome Jonathan Hickman suit he wore during the years Jonathan Hickman was writing Avengers. And the Avengers are there to basically stop the shenanigans, and they're going to drum Spider-Man out of the Avengers for, you know, Otto's bullshit. Mm-hmm. And then we get to the Mindscape, and Peter is, again, that was the one biggest gripe I had about Slott's writing, is he copied Peter, or he put Peter's mind into Ock's dying body, sure, but like his soul, you know, it's just,
I don't know.
I don't get it.
I don't get it either, but I felt it worked, because that was part of this whole story about, you know, ending Amazing at the time, Amazing 698 to 700, of, you know, Doc dying and yada, yada, yada. Well, the only way you're not going to die is if you transfer your brain and your memories into somebody else. And what's the perfect quote-unquote revenge than to do that to you, you know, to your worst enemy, make them supposedly die and whatever. And yeah, it's a little confusing as far as that goes, but as this story progresses through to the end, you know, Peter gets himself back, and like, that's as I said earlier in the show, at this point of the podcast now, I said, you know, that I wasn't sure how the hell they were going to bring Peter back, because Peter supposedly died in Ock's body. And this whole mind and soul and heart and whatever kind of thing, it's like, oh, okay, it kind of makes sense. I don't know.
I know, it's it's always been my understanding when you do mind swaps in comic is this mind goes in this body and this mind goes in that body, and nothing is left behind. So it's just meaningless fanboy gripe. But yeah, Peter's kind of doing his thing and wallowing in self-pity because he's not strong enough to beat Otto and take his body back. And we get back to the goblins, who basically got all of Kingsley's, like, villain franchisees and the Hand Ninjas and all these guys, and then there's the goblins on the other side. It's going to be, a fight for it all. So Kingsley and Norman get into it. And the one thing I got to say, the one thing I've always loved about Humberto Ramos's art, especially when working on Spider-Man, is like, you look at Goblin's eyes, like, it always draws one of Goblin's eyes like it's like a little bigger, like it's kind of bugging out of his head a bit, and just gives him this really creepy, psychotic, turn to the art. And then we get what is essentially a 2-page spread over a few panels of them getting into it with each other.
I love it because Green Goblin is now Beyonce. Say my name. That's all I could think of was the Destiny Child song.
And we go back to the Avengers, and I love how they have two completely different artists on this. I'm just wondering who did the art. Who's the other artist? You said his name before. There's Ramos, and I think this is Javier Rodriguez, who's doing the Avengers bits, and Otto's reflecting, and Iron Man comes in, is like, oh, I'm sorry, are we boring you? And he's like, with all the charges we're raising for drumming out of the Avengers, and this kind of threw me back to one of the first issues of the Busick-Perez run of Avengers when it came back from Heroes Reborn, where the Avengers drum Miss Marvel, then known as Thunderbird, out of the Avengers because she had a drinking problem. And this was really before they have there's screw you guys, I'm going home and I don't need you. And it was a couple years before she got help, and they treated her like how an alcoholic would actually act when confronted. I love that scene. But yeah, Peter, finger quotes, is why did you delete these files? And, well, to protect my secret identity. This is why you launched a civil war against Stark, isn't it, Captain? So that I could have the right to privacy? And then everyone's like, this isn't just out of the blue. Like, everyone's calling him on his bullshit.
Yep.
And even Wolverine, who is just like, dude, you're not right.
Yeah, see, I never read Avengers versus... I never read AVX, and I always knew at some point through other media that Wolverine eventually was an Avenger at one point or another, but, seeing him with the Avengers is just... It's just weird, because it doesn't feel like something Cal J. Dodd would do, or Hugh Jackman.
Yeah, well,
I don't know.
At this point, Wolverine has technically been an Avenger for about 10 years, give or take, because he became part of the Avengers in it was 04, 05, or it might have been 03, the very early aughts, where they had they had canceled Avengers. They had the Avengers disassembled storyline, and then Brian Michael Bendis recreated the Avengers in the first volume of New Avengers, which ran for I want to say 5 or 6 years. And Wolverine has been part of the Avengers organization more or less since. In fact, the only time he ever left the Avengers was when he died, and then he got better. So,
yep.
But yeah, Ock's dealing with this, and we go back to
the Goblins.
Peter and the Mindscape. And the comic I have, it goes from the Avengers to Peter and then back to the Goblins, because there's
oh, that's right. There's
a
little
one page.
Yeah.
And I like how they recreated. No, I remember Spider-Man, just the adjectiveless Spider-Man title at the end of the Clone Saga, where Ben Reilly died and Norman Osborn revealed himself, and you see this huge scar across his chest, from where the Goblin glider, crushed him years before, and now it just looks like his chest is made out of concrete, and there's this piece that's been broken out. It's just there's this cavity there. It's just okay, that's new. And at this point, I guess that's because Hobgoblin exploded a goblin grenade in his chest, and this whole time he's been Kingsley's been fighting this guy because he didn't believe this was actually Osborn.
Mm-hmm.
And then Osborn wins the fight.
Of course.
Because you don't mess with the original, kid.
Nope. And it turns out that Kingsley was actually using a hologram or a holographic thing or whatever. And Norman's like, no one can ever know.
Yeah. Well, it's not Norman, that's Phil, the Goblin King.
Oh, okay.
Because the one, and the reason he was so flim-flammed is because the guy that he killed and beheaded when Phil took over the Hobgoblin suit way back is Kingsley's twin brother, who was also active as the Hobgoblin for a time. It's a whole thing.
Yeah, it's a whole confusing thing.
Yeah. So they literally have, we go back to the Avengers and Spider, Ock is all like, screw you guys, I'm going home.
Mm-hmm.
And he's trying to act all outraged in that, and you can tell by the look in their all faces, they're like, uh-huh. Like, they were kicking him out anyhow, so they really don't care. But yeah, Spider-Man quits the Avengers. We go back to the Goblin, and, Phil wigs out, and this first issue ends with this guy who... he's basically strapped this guy into a rig that looks like it's mixing part of the Matrix, Tron, and that scene from Clockwork Orange where Malcolm McDowell's been strapped in the chair with his eyes taped open. And Kingsley's been using this tech to implant his memories and combat skills into somebody and then use it to, marionette this other guy in New York City because we're in Paris now. And he's essentially hid himself away from the world to do whatever, and he's kind of out of the fight now.
Yep.
I don't know, the first issue kind of ends, this prologue thing, it sets stuff up, and it ends well enough. I can't really complain about it. Aside from, like, going back and forth between the three different artists, which I found kind of not aggravating, just a little annoying, but it wasn't bad.
Yeah. Well, luckily, once we start Goblin Nation here in a moment, we won't have to worry about that, because it's just Giuseppe on the art. And the cool thing about Goblin Nation, at least in my trade, through Comixology, I've never seen a trade do this. They have the main cover, which is the Spider-Man mask with all the spiders crawling into and around it and that kind of thing. And then they have the full cover of what the actual trade paperback would be, front and back. So they show the back with the Goblin and the chessboard, and it has the text from the back. The Goblin rises. Under the supposedly superior Spider-Man's watch, the Green Goblin wrenched control of New York's underworld. This is all Otto Octavius' fault, and now it's his responsibility to take down the Goblin. Win or lose, this will be Otto's greatest battle, but when Spiderlings, Goblins, supervillains, and giant robots clash in a violent assault on Spidey's home base, Spider Island, will Otto be able to regain his footing and prevail? Whatever you do, don't miss the biggest event in the entire Superior Spider-Man saga. The end starts here as Spider-Man takes on the Goblin Nation. No more talking. This is an all-out war. Written by Dan Slott and Christos Gage. Illustrated by Giuseppe Canicoli with Javier Rodriguez and Felipe Briones, along with Will Simi. So, yeah, this is, like, I was not expecting how they were going to start this out. So we've got all that. We've got one of the alternate covers next, and then 31 days later. Okay. Alrighty then.
Yeah, a nice little time skip, which, I mean, there's other storylines. Like, there's the spectacular or superior team-up title where Otto kidnapped and brainwashed the Sinister Six into becoming the Superior Six, and Spider-Man was of course involved in some other storylines and crossovers. But yeah, it's a month later. New York's gone to hell in a handbasket, and Otto is, again, because the arrogance inherent in the character, no matter whether he's being a villain or a hero, just can't understand why, my tech, it should be telling me that there's no emergencies, but the city's burning. What's going on?
Mm-hmm.
And it's literally, it mentions, and it's something that had been referenced previously in the title, that he can never account for this glitch in the system. It's because randomly, like a number of issues before, Osborn found one of his little spider bots running around, and he reverse engineered it in order to basically blank any time one of these robots sees the Goblin tattoo, like the Goblin logo or anything Goblin related. It's like the shadow in his, being invisible and men's eyes and all that, like it just doesn't see that stuff.
Yeah, and it's not just looking at it, it's looking at it through the costume lenses, whether it's Spider-Man, whether it's what's her name, Watanabe, Yuri. What I love about this opening part here is this opening narration where Otto Spidey is basically saying, I should be done, crime should be in a statistical anomaly, and yet ... There's an editor note. See Superior Spider-Man Team Up number 10. Steve. Now, I know there's plenty of other Steves in the world, but I'm sorry. I'm like, oh my god, that's the ghost of Steve Ditko writing that editorial note.
Sure.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. But yeah, Otto loses his shit, and he has to, then he sees, there's this grid around the Brooklyn Bridge, and he goes and he sees Osborn. All this time it was you. Because, they've done like that. It's like that scene from The Dark Knight Rises where Batman, paints like lighter fluid on the side of the Gotham Bridge and sets it ablaze, and the Bat logo. And, we got the Goblin tags are up there. And we go back to Peter, who, again, is wandering through his memories. And we see some classic shots like, him not stopping the burglar, fighting the Juggernaut, the symbiote peeling off him, kissing Mary Jane that one time. And then he wonders, why are you at the Brooklyn Bridge? Why are you thinking about the night Gwen died? And he goes and he finds what seems to be a little more, I guess, solid memory piece that, like, he basically dead man's
Doc Ock,
Doc Ock, and he starts going through Otto's memories.
Now, see, this to me is cool. Dan Slott may have his, fans out there that are negative about what the man does, but see, because I have not read the last, almost 100 years of Spider-Man comics, or 80 plus, or whatever it is. Like, I've never kept up with a lot of the Spider-Man stuff, and the only real Doc Ock stuff I know is obviously the 94 animated series and Spider-Man 2. The original Spider-Man 2, folks, in 2004, not the amazing piece of crap that was that movie. Anyway.
Alfred Molina.
Yeah. So, seeing this and seeing Peter dive into Ock's memories and seeing Ock's story, I love that. I think that's great. I think that's a great way for Peter to understand just where Otto is coming from. Like, yeah. Otto just isn't this maniacally laughing, cackling villain anymore. He actually has a whole story. And right now, to me, Goblin Nation is the Spider-Man 2 of the Marvel Universe at this point when this was written.
Yeah. I mean, the whole thing with the Peter taking, this magical mystery tour through Otto's memories, it's the flip side of the coin of Otto when he took over Peter's body and he got, lambasted by all of Peter's memories, and he got this, slightly perverted concept of great power, great responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, it's a little tit for tat. And we get back to Peter and Anna Maria, yeah. Anna Maria, yeah. And he's trying to figure out, why are my spider bots not working? Like, how did he do this? And, she gives him, like, you know, great again, low blood sugar, you get cranky.
Mm-hmm.
And I really like Anna Maria as a character, and it shows real growth in the character of Otto, that, he recognizes someone for her mind, and he grows to love her from that. He grows to love her for everything that she is. And this is like one of my favorite parts of Slott's run, that he created an actual romance that is adult and mature, and it doesn't take, 40 goddamn years for them to, get together. And you see that in that one panel, he's got the ring in his breast pocket, and then he has that, oh yes, of course moment,
mm-hmm.
where they curse me for a fool.
Mm-hmm. I had to look and make sure, because again, I have not read this since we did that coverage back in 2013, 2014. I had to make sure that Anna Maria was an actual adult. She is a character who is I believe I read somewhere.
She's a little person.
She's a little person, but it specifically said she suffers from dwarfism, is what I read online. Because at first, reading this again, I'm like, Otto's not a degenerate. He would not date a kid. And I knew in the back of my mind that she was not, but I just had to double check, because I felt a little weird in some of their scenes.
Yeah, I mean, but that's it, and that the whole look of Anna Maria fluctuates from artist to artist. Like Giuseppe's work here, like, she has a very youthful, clean look.
Mm-hmm.
And unlike, Umberto Ramos and other artists who have drawn her before this, where it looks a little more mature. And you see, so we get back to it, and Otto is like, yeah, the one thing I didn't design that he appropriated, finger quotes, for this is the kid Uatu Jackson, who worked with Peter at Horizon Labs. He basically stole this facial recognition tech. So of course that's got to be the flaw. And he calls him, and the kid hangs up on him. Well, if you'd care to remember, Otto, you were kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? A colossal dick
mm-hmm.
to everyone there. And then they see Mayor Jameson, because, yeah, Jay Jonah has become mayor of NYC at this point in the comics. All these reporters are parroting what he used to say, the Goblin and Spidey are working together, isn't it obvious? And then this is also because at this point Otto has blackmailed Jonah into providing him with all this access and equipment and whatnot. So Jonah goes to Alchemax to talk to Liz Allen. I called her Liz Osborne before. Meet this there's Dr. Tiberius Stone and Mr. Banks and Mr. O'Mara, who's really Miguel, Spider-Man of 2099.
Yeah. And
they've come in, and he's taking possession of some new technology. It couldn't possibly be Spider Slayers, because what would J. Jonah Jameson be doing with Spider Slayers, I ask you?
Hunting Spider-Man?
That was sarcasm. Of course it's goddamn Spider Slayers.
Mm-hmm,
when has Jonah ever not used Spider Slayers?
Exactly.
He picks his teeth with Spider Slayers.
Yes, he does. What I love is right after this scene, we cut back to Spider-Man climbing up a wall or whatever. I will find him no matter what rock he's hiding under. I just love the image of Superior Spider-Man here, with the wall crawling and the light up eyes. I think that's super cool.
Yeah.
Oh, he's not in some building. He's in the underground Goblin Nation train station.
That's after he's gone and talked to Uatu, and we have this brief interlude where the cops are looking for Peter Parker at Parker Industries. Mm-hmm. And then, yeah, he's searching through the subway tunnels and the sewers.
And the Goblin surprises him, and they have
Well, I just love that page spread, and you see some like, wow, there are some old shout-outs to some like very obscure Spider-Man villains. You've got, the Ringer in behind Osborn and whoever that purple-headed looking dude is. Mm-hmm. You've got that dude on the left side with looks like an exclamation mark in his chest. That's the Answer, who's this really dumb supervillain. He has the ability to generate like 1,000 different super abilities, but it's only in response to whatever problem he's facing.
So,
which
go ahead.
Like if he has to melt through a steel wall, he'll generate the ability to generate intense heat and flames, or if he has to lift a car to save somebody, he'll generate super strength. I just thought it was like interesting, but ultimately one of the dumbest villain powers you could have.
Yeah, it is. And my only thought is, okay, so the next thing we're going to see is the Question from DC Comics going up against the Answer from Marvel Comics.
Oh, God, that would not end well for the Answer.
No, it really wouldn't.
Vic Sage would break him. But yeah, so they have a sit-down where, Osborn's just like, boys, away.
Mm-hmm.
And he sits down, he's like, this is going to be a whole new dynamic, and we're going to go on by the book. And this book, actually, you and I have never been the worst of enemies, have we? Otto?
Mm-hmm.
And it's just literally Osborn knows, and he's now essentially trying to blackmail Otto.
Yep.
And Otto's like, nuts to that, and flips the table, and they have a fight.
Mm-hmm. They have a pseudo
and
fight.
It's like they have a pseudo fight because this is a holographic avatar. Because Otto went back to Spider Island, and he's strapped up into this VR rig. I reckon you may not recognize that. That's a piece of technology that Otto created back in the 90s during the Clone Saga, when he had this blonde Amazon bombshell named Bombshell, who was like it was the Harley Quinn to his Joker. And the whole reason was that Bombshell was this holographic, like solid light avatar, because the woman inside the rig was this, it's an overweight woman. She didn't think she was beautiful, that sort of thing. And Otto, being a bit of a roly-poly himself at the time, fell for and created this technology. And it was like the first time that Otto had really, second time Otto had really had a love interest in the comics. I mean, there was that time he romanced and tried to marry Aunt May because she inherited a nuclear power plant for some reason.
That's weird.
Yeah, so Osborn sends out the Goblin Army. You see the Goblin King, and oh God, I can't remember what's her name. That was Lily something. She was going to marry Osborn. Menace. She's like the new female Goblin. I don't know who the other purple and green Goblin is, and they're attacking Spider Island, and kind of blow it off the goddamn map.
Yeah, pretty much.
And I have the single issue digital comics here, and I love the promo for the next issue where the Green Goblin is back, and he's playing chess. Or maybe it's a metaphor of some sort.
Yeah. I've got that here too in the collection trade as well. It's very, very interesting. I love that cover.
Yeah. And then we get into issue 28, Goblin Nation Part 2, and everyone's watching from across the bay, and it's like this giant garbage fire.
Mm-hmm.
And I love, again, Otto just can't accept that no matter how good you are, kid, there's usually somebody better. He's like, but I cracked the Goblin stealth protocols. There's no way his forces could have gotten through my security grid. And then Osborn hacks in, does the multi-screen mocking. He's like, did you actually think you could out-hack me?
Yeah. No.
Spider-Man?
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, I'm going to kill you now. Just attack my darlings, raise the spider's nest to the ground.
Mm-hmm.
And I just realized who that other female goblin is.
Mm-hmm.
That's revealed later on. So
Yeah, it's
I
Monster.
won't leave that for now. Yeah,
It's
but I mean, who Monster is?
Well, yes,
is
I understand, but I'm saying, like, when you said it earlier, I'm like, it's Menace and Monster. That's what I was thinking earlier. I just hadn't said it yet. But yeah, we'll find out who she is later.
Yeah. And, we got the living brain shields Otto from this. And, the living brain, like, I know it's a robot and it's therefore technically intelligent, but the way his speech pattern is, it's very, like, is it Lenny, like from Of Mice and Men, like, tell me about the rabbits, George.
Mm-hmm.
Because status, did this unit provide sufficient shielding? We're click.
Mm-hmm.
And I love Otto's, not 20. He was my favorite. And in that moment, I thought of the Monarch from Venture Brothers.
Mm-hmm.
And also that scene where Go botted the living brain into a watercraft to escape from Spider Island. And the reason I say GoBot is very appropriate because he strapped some stuff to tow behind him and he's just kind of folded his arms up behind him and he's got these joysticks. And he's like, and run!
Mm-hmm.
And then we go back to Peter, surfing the mindscape and see all the BS that Otto put up with in his life and how he got beat by his dad and, babied by his mom. And there's the one image where he says, like, Otto, what are you doing? Girls at your age? You're just a baby. I won't hear of it, which is a shout out to I forget if it was a regular Spider-Man comic or a spin-off in the 90s where it's flashing back to Otto's past. His mom basically guilts him out of any joy he wanted to have in his life. And this one night she's like going out for it. She's like, what? I have a life. I deserve. And Otto snaps and assaults his mom. So it's a shout out to that because his mom is
Nuts.
well, but his mom is also kind of a raging bitch. But yeah, so we see Otto's taken, or Otto, over the island. He's like, what's that? He got away? No matter. I know his every weakness. Like, I love Camicoli's art. Like, even when he's not maniacally laughing, you can hear the maniacal laughter.
Oh, yeah.
And we go back, Alchemix Tower and Mayor Jameson. And I was wrong before. They're not spider slayers. They're goblin slayers.
Mm-hmm.
Pardon the hell out of me.
Mm-hmm. And they have Jameson's face all over them.
Because the guy is nothing if...
Yeah.
I mean, they turned him from J. Jonah Jameson into Bill O'Reilly after this.
Oh, God.
They really did. And they go to... from there, the goblins assault Mary Jane and... Is that Hobie Brown, I think? Or that's her new...
that's Ollie.
Is that... Yeah, that's Ollie. That's the firefighter boyfriend that she had at the time.
Yeah.
And I do like that thing where she's she runs to her safe and she pulls out, she's got some OG Spire like spinnerets.
Thwip.
Yeah. Thwip, motherfucker. And she's got that awesome Spider-Man pose and I'm just like,
yeah.
There's a reason why we love you, MJ.
Exactly.
It's and then we go back to Park Industries and he shows up and apparently, he's been missing from crime and there's Miss Jaffrey there and she's calling him a bullshit. I never liked that character. I just want to say that now. It's not because I just find really arrogant, abrasive characters who act all offended when shit goes wrong and their way is the only way and I just never liked you. I just never liked you. more arrogant than Dr. Octopus, which I didn't think was possible.
No, exactly. And then the Wraith, aka Yuri, shows up.
Yeah.
And then Monster shows up as well.
And then, oh my God, it was Carly Cooper the whole time.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's just, of all the girlfriends, like post MJ, I really thought Carly was going to be the one to stick, but because writers and a lot of fans can't, no, it's Peter and MJ. You know, eventually she was written out, and I always wish she would have hung around, you know?
Yeah.
But yeah, she attacks Wraith, you know, unmasks, which isn't really an unmasking so much as she just pulls the hood off her head. A bunch of goblin ninjas go to they May and Jay, you know.
We have this whole storyline where MJ gets all Peter's relatives and friends and whatever out of town. Yeah, the whole rest of this issue is but the whole rest part of this part is them fighting and talking and all that.
Yeah, I do like where we go back to the Mindscape and Peter going through Otto's memories. Like in his memories, it's Peter experiencing. Like it's not, you don't just see Otto. No, it's Peter. He's dressed up like Otto. He's got the Buddy Holly glasses, the nerdy clothes. He's strapped himself into that soup pot arm brace that Otto first had back in. You know, they even have like Camicoli, like Giuseppe Camicoli does a great nod back to the great Steve Ditko art Spider-Man comics where, you know, it's Peter, but they're modeled after those exact images. Like, you know, Peter from behind this like 2-foot wide piece of leaded glass and the explosion that bonded him. And, you know, they have that thing where Peter maniacal laughter, I am Dr. Octopus. And then we go back to the Brain tries to finger quotes and Sajani and pulls Monster into this lab, and she reveals that the only knows Peter as her target is she's fighting for control and she needs his help to you know, of the goblin madness.
Yeah, from the serum that she was injected with. So that's kind of, and then we jump over to Empire State U, and Mayhem shows up, or Madness, or whatever the other Menace. There you go. And she basically goblin naps Anna Maria. Yeah,
and I love how it's that nod to the classic Spider sense where Peter's half not. With that shot of, oh yeah, Lily Hollis. I'm an old friend of Peter's. Come on, I'll take you to him. Absolutely nothing. I'm going to kill. Absolutely nothing to worry about. She's a goblin. She's probably nutty like that.
Oh yeah. This part 3's main cover, might be my favorite. It's Spider-Man 2099 and Superior, basically trussed up by this Spider Slayer robot with the Goblin's face on it.
It's a Goblin Slayer. What's that, Jonah? Your plan to discredit the Goblin started? Oh my God, I'm shocked and appalled by this turn of events. Like, honestly, I miss the old days where, you know, just J.K. Simmons entrenched behind a desk talking shit about Spider-Man and ignoring reality. I really wish we could go back to classic Jonah, but we can't. Because, like I said, he eventually becomes Bill O'Reilly for the Fact Network.
Oh, no.
That's a curious spelling of Fox, but yes, he becomes like this talking head on the Fact Network, and Cindy Moon becomes his Jim Olsen for a time, and then that all falls apart. And within the last few months, Peter revealed himself to Jonah as being Spider-Man, and now Jonah's like this very obnoxious, overprotective, I know how to fight this supervillain, Peter, do it my way. And
God.
yeah, he's like the most annoying version of Bibbo Babowski to Peter's Superman.
I mean, that's like his idea back in the 90s to make Matt Gargan the Scorpion. Oh, God. So this issue here, we go, like you said, we go to Bill O'Reilly as the mayor. You know, and he doesn't want to, you know, have any part of what's going on with Spider. Well, he does. Glory doesn't want to have any part to do with this. You know, and she says, and with you, your wife's dying wish was for you to let go of your hate. If you won't do it for her, you never will. And we cut to outside Connecticut with all the Spider friends and family. MJ and Peter have a conversation while they try to get Carly fixed up.
Yeah. And I like how part of that is Sajani went out and she was playing to the news camera. It was like, the roof collapsed on him. I don't know if anyone's alive. Oh, whatever will we do?
Mm-hmm. Well, she had to do something, so...
Yeah, well, like I said, she's a total bitch. And they're working on trying to reverse engineer the Goblin formula. And then Osborn hacks in. He's like, you wouldn't be trying to reverse my serum, would you?
Mm-hmm.
And it's just so... Again, at this point, you think Otto would have keyed to the idea that everything he's doing is wrong and you should feel bad.
Yeah.
Like, how do you not know that Osborn has pretty much figured out your whole game? You have to, I don't know, figure out a new way of doing things. And then he runs by the living brain where click, doctor, the Wraith is coming too. Shall I offer her a tasty beverage?
Yeah.
Don't ever change, you clanking, clattering bucket of bolts. I love you.
And then the Goblin sets off a bunch of bombs across the city. Yeah, basically all locations that mean something to Otto. The Heart Clinic, Mocha-Cola, which looks like Marvel Comics. I do love that panel, though. The wide shot of the panel with the Goblin's head and the laughter all around it with all the locations. That's awesome art right there.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, the Atomic Research Center, his childhood home, and then he blows up the Heart Clinic, which is honestly one of my favorite facets of the Spider mythos that Slott created. Oh no, Cardiac, this lame superhero from the 90s is just blown up. Whatever will we do without him?
Yeah.
And it's just boom. And just Otto's like literally weeping in his mask, and Osborn's laughing so hard he's crying. He's like, oh god, this is like the best day ever. And finally Otto keys it. It's a trap. I'm a fool if I do what he says, but can I even take the chance he truly has Anna Maria? And it's like, what would Parker do? Well, he'd fight until he won, because that's kind of what Peter does, you putz.
Yep.
And then he's swinging towards the trap, and he's talking to, he calls the mayor, or no, police chief, and Jonah takes over the call, and is like, I know you're in on it, it's all your fault, Spider-Man.
Mm-hmm.
And then Tiberius Stone talks to O'Mara, who, I want to call him Jason O'Mara, but I don't think that's his actual name. And then I realized Jason O'Mara is the actor that's voiced Batman in all the DCU animated films. Yeah. But Spider-Man 2099 has gone off to do his thing. They've gone to this, I forget, Empire State University, was that Marla Jameson Memorial Building. And you kidnapped Don Lamaze?
Yeah.
And
Nobody
it's this
cares
guy
about that guy.
Yeah, and it's basically this guy that Osborn sees this guy as like, Otto's, it's the closest thing you've ever had to a friend. I saw how you saved this fat ass in the midget. And I was like, oh, come on, Osborn, do you have to be a dick like that?
Well, he kind of does, so we see how more evil he is than Otto ever was.
And again, Otto's like surprised by this, that Osborn has hacked his Spidey backpack and his spider armor legs, and
basically rips them off of himself.
Yeah, and this just again proves how stupid Otto is here, because dude, your technology has been compromised well and truly. How do you not put on a fresh set of clothes? Like, you got to have a backup, right? All right, Don, that's the professor that was giving him shit in class when he was studying for his doctorate.
Yep.
And then the professor he sacrifices himself to save Spider-Man from like the one remaining leg that was active, and dies in his arms, and it's a very Uncle Ben-esque moment.
Yeah. And then Miguel shows back up to help.
Yeah, after Jameson kind of kicks his butt. And feeling so superior. And then, what? Oh my God. Osborn's taking over the Goblin Slayers.
Dun dun dun.
I mean, honestly, that's the only problem I have with the cover from this issue, is it spoils
the ending. Yeah, see, I didn't know that at the time.
I mean, I would have had like maybe holding two arms, like you have in the foreground, you have like the silhouette of the bulbous egg-shaped head of these robots, and you have two arms pinning both Spideys to a wall. So you at least know that's coming, but this sudden and unforeseen turn of events.
See, I think the cool thing with... I'll have to double check this. Oh no, it is the Goblin's face. I thought the cover originally, now that I see it now, it's like, oh, of course. I thought it had JJ's face on it, and obviously it doesn't. It has the Goblin's face. But yeah, that was, what a way to spoil the ending of the comic. But it's such a cool cover. Because in the actual scene, it's more of a full page spread kind of thing where, and they're actually reversed. So it kind of is a spoiler and kind of isn't a spoiler. Because on the cover, 2099's on the left and Superior's on the right. Well, in this page, they're reversed kind of thing. But, it is what it is.
Semantics.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was not sure where this, because I figured, it's just issues 27 to 31 and the annual isn't something else. But coming up after this issue that we're ending on now, we have the second Superior Spider-Man annual, which is the story is all about Ben and Phil Urich. So far in the main story arc, I'm loving it. I think it's great. I think it's fun. I think it's interesting. Might be at the point of this writing, not necessarily this recording, because I know there have been plenty of other great Spider-Man stories since this. At the time that this was written, and me reading it now, this is probably one of my favorite modern-day Spider-Man stories to this point. And I remember way back when we first started Superior Spider-Man, I was super excited for it because it was going to be so different than the normal Peter Parker, I'm a teenager, I'm in high school. And I get it. People, that grew up in the 50s and 60s, and that's what they were introduced to it. And yeah, that's kind of what I was introduced to it with the 90s animated series and all that. But like, I remember at the time when we were first doing this, I'm like, I want something different. And that's what Superior Spider-Man was all about, was basically flipping the script on this entire universe with regards to Spider-Man.
Yeah. And the annual, I do have that here as well. Like they have Nora's cashing in on her notoriety. Again, another female character. I didn't hate her, but I also didn't care for her because they were so obviously trying to make her a new version of Lois Lane.
Yeah.
But, she's cashing in on this book deal because, I slept with a supervillain. And, it's also, the main story is about, Ben Urich dealing with the fact that he didn't see this and he's supposed to be this hot, great reporter.
I exposed Daredevil. I did this. I did that, kind of a thing. And then it gets into the whole Goblin, Goblin serum
juice
thing and everything else and all of that. We have more of Sanji and because they're at Parker Industries and everything else. It's a nice little one-shot. It's a nice little thing showing a different version of the Goblin. Like you said before, it's not the original Hobgoblin, but it's another version of Hobgoblin. And, Ben wants to, cure his nephew, and that doesn't happen.
Yeah, he's about to be... He's got that awesome fire sword, which is one of the my favorite bits of, villain gear that... Phil got. Otto pops in and they fight, and Ben has this realization that, like, he was trying to justify in his mind, no, it's the juice and it's making him crazy. But without the mask, he can see that Phil has gone, completely around the bend. This is who he wants to be, and Robbie Robertson's been kidnapped in this whole thing, and it's just kind of a side story.
Yeah, it is a side story, but it also fits in with part of what's going on with Goblin Nation, like I said, with the whole serum thing and them trying to cure Carly and all that. I like how it begins and ends with Ben. I've always liked Ben. I've always felt that he was a really, really cool character. What is interesting to me is that that we have almost two stories, because we have like almost a backup story here by Christos Gage in Chasing Ghosts, because it kind of continues the Goblin Nation story, but it's in the point of view of Yuri/Wraith. Yeah,
and apparently Goblin Juice makes your hair grow like 3 feet, because the artist draws Carly with Mary Jane levels of hair, and again, nitpicky fanboy gripe. And it's just these asides, but it does add stuff to the ongoing narrative. The one thing, just to flip back to the Ben story there, I love how they open it with Ben, and he's kind of had like that moment of rage and like trashed his apartment and everything's kind of off kilter, and there's this photo, smashed photo of him, Phil, and his late wife. But he's cleaned everything up, and he's, I still have the truth. I'm a reporter. He's going to write the story and tell the truth and let the people decide. It's a great moment for him. And I also love the artist. You look on the desk there with his research material. There's shots of Phil in the costume. There's a couple of articles with Osborn. And there's that one with the just underneath the pumpkin bomb, there's a shot of the Green Goblin. And again, this is one of the best things about this run of Spider-Man stories, is the artists on duty give nods back to previous continuity and previous art. It's specific shots, because that image of the Goblin is from the cover of Green Goblin #1 in the 90s, when Phil Urich became this heroic Green Goblin for, I think it's like a 10 or 12 issue run. Like, he found an old hideout of Norman Osborn's, he fell into some goblin juice, put on this suit which had this circuitry laced inside, so when he had the suit all on, he tucks the mask in, it activates the goblin serum in his blood and gives him like super strength, and he has like his lunatic laugh that he can use to disorient people, and eventually that gets damaged and he starts the long slow spiral to supervillainy. But yeah, like the annual, it's I wouldn't say it's absolutely necessary reading, but I would highly recommend it.
Yeah, I mean, like, the end of it where Wraith is running out and it says continued in Superior Spider-Man number 30. I mean, yeah, no, it's not must-read, but if you're like me and you bought the collection over buying all the single issues, it's here. Like I said, I wasn't sure where it was going to fit or what it was going to do, but it's here, and it's fine.
I mean, if you really want to read this in the thing, folks, like I have a whole lot of digital comics that I organize, so if there's an annual like this that fits between two issues, the annual would be issue 29.5, because you can kind of read it. It fits in between these, and then we get into 30, which has this awesome, ripped and tattered Spider-Man hood, and it looks. This is like the classic Spidey mask. Yeah, it's not like the.
It's not Superior.
It's not, only in the respect that it is completely damaged. But like it's in the middle of this web with these spiders, crawling all over it. Yeah, and we get into the story, and Spidey.
Before we get too far in, I do want to say that Dan Slott's on the plot, Christos Gage is on the script, Giuseppe is on pencils, John Dell and Terry Pallett are on inks, and then Antonio Fabella is on colors for this issue.
Well,
and what I'm loving, it is pretty much the same. I just didn't really look at it the last couple issues that we've been talking about it. What I'm loving is they're basically grooming Christos Gage to take Dan's, I don't want to say his slot, but to take Dan's place. Yes, his place after Dan eventually, and obviously this isn't the end. This is just Superior Spider-Man. Dan went on to redo Amazing, and Amazing had a whole other run, which we will be getting to. At least what I find so interesting and funny is that I started doing the pull bag with Spider-Man at the end of a run, which was, like I said at the beginning of this podcast, Spada, the Bolt Matrix, and I did issue 698 to 700, which was the whole lead up to Superior. The whole end of, the 700 issues of the original run kind of thing. And then you and I have done all this and everything else. And now I'm going back to the end of the next Amazing, which was 794 to 801, which is Dan Slott's last ride with Spidey. And we'll be covering Red Goblin at some point here in the future.
Yeah, because, I mean, the way Marvel has this habit in order to get new readers and all that, Marvel has a habit of restarting titles. So from this it goes into what is technically Amazing Spider-Man Volume 3, and then Amazing Spider-Man Volume 4, which then goes back to the original numbering. So if you count all the rebooted Amazing Spider-Man runs, we end up at issue 800 with the whole Red Goblin storyline. But we get into here, and I'm just going to call him Spidey Beyond, because I almost trip over my tongue when I say 2099. But Spidey Beyond and Superior, have battled their way free of the Goblin Slayers, and Osborn's taunting them from the Mysterio crystal ball face that all Spider Slayers have for some reason.
Yep.
And then he has this don't fall. They're like, we've got Anna Maria. Don't fall for it, Spider-Man. It's a trap. And oh no, Anti-M. It's like, say what you will about Osborn, he might be a bastard, but he has fun with his work. Mm-hmm. And then Spider-Man, I'll kill you, and he punches a robot because that's going to help things. And then Superior dicks off because he's got a plan, but it doesn't include Beyond. And then Miguel's like, you bithead, which I forgot that's one of the curse words that I think it was Kurt Busiek who wrote a large part of Spidey 2099. Mm-hmm. It's like, you bithead, I knew your poster. The real Spider-Man would never. And then we go back to the Mindscape, and it's now we're getting into the last days of Osborn, the ends of the earth. And I love Giuseppe's kind of take on, I cannot remember the artist's name, but it's that awesome shot of you see Otto when he's in his Iron long octopus suit with all the tubes and wires plugged into the back of his head because he's basically has the supervillain version of football's CTE syndrome and radiation poisoning, and he's dying. And then we see the golden Octobot, transfer his mind into Peter's body. Yeah. And after that brief interlude, we go back to the
city under
war
siege
for NYC.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we see the Avengers. Oh my God, Cardiac survived! Saints be praised. Honestly, I the reason I keep going back to that, folks, is Cardiac is one of the dumbest hero characters that he came up with in the 90s. And he's just, it's just like, no, dear God, why?
And then we have the whole thing with Liz and her son Normie. I'm like, oh God, no. Why is she holding a goblin mask behind her back? Oh God.
Well, because at this point, I think she's sussed out that Norman is still in the company. And it's basically Jonah losing his mind and regressing to, it's not my fault. It's Spider-Man. It's Spider-Man. It's always Spider-Man. It can't be my fault. I'm a bastion of truth and integrity. And, Liz is like coming, it's like, look, I told you the robots weren't ready. You did anyhow. We're severing ties. It's all on Jameson. Fuck y'all. We'll help the city as best we can. And, I don't think there's anything nefarious with the Goblin Mask. It's just, let's face it, Norman Jr., son of Harry Osborn, that kid is going to need years of therapy. And especially what happens later on in the Red Goblin storyline. Like, dear God, that kid is not going to have a normal life.
Oh, don't spoil it, because I haven't read it yet.
That's not...
I'll say this right now. I have not read... I was so pissed when they ended this just because that new fucking movie was coming at the time. I was so pissed. So, not only did I not finish reading Superior Spider-Man, I have read nothing of the second Amazing Run. The ending is the only thing I'll be reading.
Yeah.
I don't know.
But, so yeah, we go back to the Mindscape, and despite everything Peter's experienced going through Otto's memories, he doesn't lose anything of himself, and he starts taking his mind, his mind starts taking his body back, and he walks into the light. But that's a good thing here, folks. And they have one of my all-time favorite pages, double-page spread in a Spider-Man comic is, Peter, he's fully come back into his mind. He's not just this blue ghost, and he's, in the classic Spider-Man suit, and you see the web of his life behind him, and there's all these classic, it's not Giuseppe's count.
It's
trying
not
to
his
ape the art.
Yeah, it is
it's
the classic
of,
pages. Yeah.
Yeah, it's snapshots of John Romita Jr. and John Romita Sr. and Alberto Ramos. And I think if I squint, there might be some Mark Bagley in there and Roy Thomas. And it's the greatest hits of Spider-Man. And we talked off air before we started recording about how there are these people who hate Dan Slott for the way he taught, his opinions and the way he carries a purport. Deals with stuff in the real world. You know what? That's all well and good. Everyone says stuff that a lot of people say stuff I don't agree with. But for people to say that he doesn't get Spider-Man, nuts to y'all. Because the dialogue here, every triumph, every tragedy, the heartache and the joy, family, friends, the adventure of it all, and the fun. Oh my God, there was so much fun. It's mine, the good and the bad. I built that. I'm not surrendering one second. I'm taking it all back. He gets Spider-Man. Ultimately, as much as he wallows in self-pity, and believe you me, folks, Peter loves to wallow in the self-pity pool. He owes up to it, and he fights back, and he fights to win.
Yep.
And that's most important thing about Spider-Man, how everyone's like, no, Spider-Man's like this, and Spider-Man's like, you know what? Unless you're writing the comic, doesn't matter.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. And I love that page. That is one of my favorite pages. I have several different panels and pages out of this entire trade paperback with Goblin Nation that I absolutely love. But that is by far one of the best pages I've seen in a Spidey comic in a long time. We go back to the Goblin Underground where, they have Amy Chen, not Anna Maria. And Goblin is quite literally in the money train. I swear to God, the panel where he says, "I've done bridges, this time I thought I'd go with tunnels." I swear to God, I'm like, you put him in a Wesley Snipes or a Woody Harrelson suit, it's the money train.
Oh, yeah.
So Amy Chen's there, and she's getting ready to get hit by a train, and Otto's like trying to think about it. If I miss, if I'm hit, there'll be no one to save Anna Maria. What should I do? Ghost Peter, jump! And of course, he jumps, saves her, saves himself, yada, yada, yada. We have a conversation with Ghost Peter and Otto, which I absolutely love. He says, "You screwed up, Otto. When there's time, you weigh options. When there's not, you act, and you always do the right thing. Even if it means giving up the advantage, like I just did. You know I'm here now, and I know what that means. Round 2. Well,
yeah.
Bring it. I'm ready this time. Yes, you are." and the whole time, I'm reading this, and after the whole switcheroo between their two minds, I hear nothing but Christopher Daniel Barnes from the 94 series as Peter while I'm reading this right now.
Oh, yeah. No, I agree. Well, maybe Christopher Daniel Barnes, a little bit of Dan Gilvenson, because those are two of my favorite Spider-Man voice actors. But when you said Money Train, I wanted to make a shout out. Go back and listen to that episode of M-Wire, folks.
Yes, exactly. It'll be in the show notes.
So Otto drops Amy off with an EMT and has this, Pinocchio and Jiminy Cricket like conversation, and they go back to Parker Industries, and I love where Sajani's there, and she's like, "What do you think this is? Because we had a thing," and he just says, "What are you doing? You can't go in there." And he's like, "Shut up!" I was like, "You're saying exactly what I was thinking, Otto. Exactly what I was thinking."
Mm-hmm.
And he straps him into the Mind Helmet version 2 and deletes himself.
Basically. You know what, folks? What Otto basically did, without any kind of glove or any kind of stones, he just basically, snapped his fingers and he was gone. One snap and one guy goes. Not the entire world. Thanks a lot, Thanos, for nothing.
Yeah, and I do like that as it's all being deleted, like, Peter gets a look at, they get this other, like, they get another walk through his memories, and you see his heroic deeds. And I love his final words is like, "Only you can save her because you are the superior Spider-Man."
Mm-hmm.
And damn right you should cry for him, man, because he just sacrificed himself in an incredibly noble way.
As much as I don't care for it, and I know our good buddy Optimus Solo doesn't care for the single fucking tear, like look at any version, any episode of He-Man or He-Man and She-Ra or whatever, there's always a single fucking tear at times in any 80s animation kind of thing. Here, it actually works because it feels like he's lost somebody. And it's not just his quote-unquote worst enemy or whatever, but it's somebody that affected his life in a way that he never thought that would happen. Now, I don't necessarily like the fact that he's suiting up in the classic suit. I love the superior suit, and I would have loved to have seen what he could have done with Otto's technology, because Peter is a genius himself kind of thing.
Yeah.
But I do love that they did bring the classic suit back as that final panel for this issue.
Yeah, and you see the closet of Spidey suits that Peter's had. The characters had in some respects since the big time story arc where he joined Horizon Labs, which honestly I was so bummed when Otto got Peter fired from Horizon and all that, because some of the Max Modell and the supporting staff, and just finally Peter's arrived as a scientist, and later on when Slott had him become the science editor at the Daily Bugle for a time, I was like, why do we keep going back there? Eventually he's got to grow up and move out of the house.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we get Peter suiting up in the classic suit, which again is somewhere in my top 3 all-time favorite superhero costumes. I love this suit. I think it's the best spider suit he's ever wore. I like the Ben Reilly redesign they had in the 90s with the web shooters on the outside of his wrists, and he had the impact webbing and the very 90s looking costume. But I think that works because it keeps mostly it's an enhanced version of the classic suit. But yeah, it's Spidey. Peter soups up and puts on his my turn. Oh shit, there's gonna be a fight. And we get to the issue 31, the quote-unquote series finale, because technically 32 and 33 happened chronologically a time before this. But I, again, like the web of Peter reclaiming his memories and everything in the last issue, all the shattered glass as Peter, it's like he's falling through a skylight. All the shattered glass is all covers
from Superior.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I love that.
I absolutely love it. I think it's great. Yes, 32 and 33 are a part of this series, but they are also part of Spider-Verse, which we will have to cover way later. As I mentioned in the beginning of this book, as soon as I get some money to actually get some stuff on Comixology, we will be doing Spider-Verse at some point. We will probably be doing Red Goblin before we do Spider-Verse, because my thought, and I know we have to get to this review and finish it and all that and everything else, but my thought process on the pull bag Spider-Man coverage going forward, we cover Red Goblin, because I've already bought it. We cover Edge of Spider-Verse, Spider-Verse, and then we start into Spider-Geddon, because Spider-Geddon is the current big event leading into a new Spider-Verse event. So,
well, it's technically Spider-Verse 2, but
okay, well, whatever it is, I'm saying because of Marvel, because of PlayStation, because of Sony, I've watched someone play through the entire Spider-Man game, the new one, and I absolutely love it. I think it's great, and they're bringing that Spider-Man into Spider-Geddon, so I absolutely want to read it because I loved watching the story unfold in that game and the Black Cat DLC and all that. So I'm super excited. You folks should be happy with this episode and other Spidey episodes that are coming. We're also going to do some other stuff that we needed to finish up eventually as well. Because it's been a while since I've actually wanted to be able to dig into some Marvel stuff. I mean, most of the pull bag stuff in the last 2 or 3 years has been DC, IDW, Boom, whatever. But anyway, the Superior Spider-Man series finale, issue 31. Wow. So the Goblin has Anna Maria. And we go back to Parker Industries, and he's changed into his old suit, and, go out and save the day. But because this is now Peter Parker and Otto is gone, supposedly, because there's also the Superior Octopus right now in 2018, folks. We'll talk about that later. He sees that Carly is almost fully cured, except for her goblin eyes. So
yeah, and I get that. I'm just, you go back to that shot of Norman and Anna Maria, and I love how it's all wires and everything connected, all the pumpkin bombs. But I mean, it looks like some supervillain version of a pumpkin patch.
Mm-hmm.
And I like how you have like the regular like softball size, baseball size, and then you got one that looks like an actual pumpkin. It might be an actual pumpkin because, well, Osborne's cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs, so Lord knows. But yeah, we get back to Parker Industries, and Peter apologizes to Jenny, and she's again a raging bitch, so she doesn't even hear that until he like, what? You're gonna cure somebody? Sure, you wouldn't rather beat him to the death first? It was like, shut up. Please.
Yes.
And Peter goes and apologizes to Carly and tries to tell her, look, that wasn't me, it was Otto. Like, look, I'm sorry, I am so sorry. And they get to work on
Fixing
tweaking
the
spider tech. Yeah. And then you have where he talks to Aunt May, are you guys all right? Yeah, I'm working on it. We're trying to fix this. And it's all intercut with him web swinging his way across NYC and along the way just almost casually taking out some bad guys.
Yes. Almost like what you do in the video game. Okay, so I love this panel. This panel might be in the post. I don't know. It's right after they're working on the spider bots. He says, okay, things are bad, but I can handle this. After what I just came back from, I can handle anything. But first, there's something I have to do. Something Otto would have considered unimportant. But there's nothing more important, not in the whole world. I have to hear her voice and know she's okay. And obviously, secure a line, call Aunt May. Okay, so I don't know if you've ever used Comixology, you may or may not have, but the guided view does like this storyboard panel thing, and sometimes they blow out to like splash pages. The full page of him swinging, oh, I love it. I love the colors, I love the art, I love the drawing on it, the lines are perfect, the web fluid is a little more blue than white, but other than that, whatever, who cares? It's an awesome, epic image of Spider-Man. So he calls Aunt May and, as you said, does the talking and whatever else. J. Jonah Jameson is now flipping over desks and tables and all of that silly thing that J. Jonah Jameson does. Meanwhile, Mr. Stone is... Go ahead.
I was going to say, and of course he's like, they're going down with me. There's no way they could put a positive spin on this debacle. I was like, how long have you lived in the Marvel goddamn universe, Jonah? And
Exactly.
how often have shitheels like Norman Osborn and Obadiah Stane and et cetera, pulled gold out of bullshit?
Yep.
Going down.
Yep. And Tiberius Stone is going to be selling the Spider-Bot units to the highest bidder.
Yeah. I can only imagine that one of the men on the other end of that call is this face masked and blue helmeted individual. Is like, Destro, this man sells better tech than you do. He's like, that's not, Commander. But yeah, we go back to ESU. Peter rescues Miguel and tells him, I was brain swapped. We don't have time to talk. I'm a goblin. Could use some help, old buddy, old pal. And Miguel's like, that's just stupid enough to be right.
Yep. Pretty much.
Let us be chums.
Yep, pretty much. And
honestly, one of my favorite, as much as you love that scene of Peter swinging over the cityscape and calling Aunt May, one of my favorite images in this, favorite panels in this issue is where in my head I hear that Mighty Mouse, here I come to save the day, and foot to the face. Like, he just Goblin King's face in.
Mm-hmm.
Like, boot to the goddamn, I'm sorry, it's just like, it's beautiful.
Yep.
He rescues it. It literally talks to the Avengers for like 5 seconds, and they're like, oh god, he's back.
Mm-hmm.
Which is kind of goes back to an issue after this in the Amazing Spider-Man Volume 3, number 1, where this is like, look, I brought cookies. It was Doc Ock in my head. And they're like, yeah, that sounds about right.
Mm-hmm. And we cut back through to, Spider-Man showing up at Alchemax and Tiberius Stone having the tech and whatever, and he hits a button and basically screws the pooch on Spider-Man for a minute until Miguel comes in and punches Stone out, which is all very interesting and nice, but we get what I consider the best interaction, and again, this one specifically has to be Christopher Daniel Barnes from 94 because of the way the pun is, and it has to be Neil Ross from the same series, because Neil Ross was Norman Osborn / the Green Goblin in that series. I had no idea Springer was fucking Norman Osborn in the 94 Spider-Man series until I interviewed him recently. Except the dignity of knowing I never carried a man purse. It's you, the one and only. Like, I'm sorry, like, yes, I agree with you, and I absolutely love Dan Gilvezan, and I love his version of Spider-Man, but my version was 94, the one that made me read Spider-Man comics as a teenager in the 90s was the Marvel Comics, Fox, Spider-Man, John Semper Jr., all of that. This exchange can only be that version, because I'm sorry, as much as I love Dan Gilvezan, his series was never that quippy.
You know what? I agree with you, and it's a very nitpicky thing for me. Is like, as much as I love Christopher Daniel Barnes Spider-Man, and I do, I always thought his puns sounded just the tenor, the sound of his voice made them sound a little meaner than I thought they should be, which is why I like Dan Gilvezan's voice here. Except in this moment, third favorite voice of Spider-Man of all time, Josh Keaton.
I do love Josh, yes.
I can totally hear Spectacular Spidey saying, well, except for the dignity of knowing I never carried a man purse. I can hear Spectacular Spider-Man coming out of that. Maybe even NPH. NPH is number 4. And
I never cared for him as Spider-Man. That MTV series sucked.
That's another podcast for another day. But they get into it, and I love it when you see these panels in art where you see the action is illustrated by a couple of the images being a lighter tone in color. Because where Norman throws a razor bat, and Peter leaps up, grabs it, tuck and rolls, throws it back, frees Anna Maria, crushes Osborn's wrists, or at least the sparkle blasters that he has built into his gloves. And then he rips off his mask and he's like, I have no idea who you are. And this is a thing that I appreciate what Dan Slott was trying to do here. He's teasing that Osborn has changed his look. He's plastic surgery, and he's been inside Alchemax from the beginning. And then within 3, because it was less than a year, and then Secret Wars happened. In Volume 4, he's gone back to like the traditional Osborn hairstyle in his face, and it's all kind of scarred up. And I don't know if that's from the reverse plastic surgery or what. But yeah, it's just like he looks more like Steve Lombard from the Daily Planet than he does Norman Osborn. And this is also the thing, the greatest, it's akin to Star-Lord's it's the greatest screw you Spider-Man has ever done to the Goblin, where he releases basically any spider mechs that are loaded with the cure that Osborn has knocked away, and he removes the Goblin from Norman Osborn.
Yep.
Holy shit, that was beautiful.
Yep.
And
go ahead.
Then he rescues Anna Maria.
Yeah, he rescues Anna Maria, and I love this rescue. Practice this 1,000 times, where to latch on to someone, how much counterforce to use, reeling them in. At this point, I could do it in my sleep. Because I'm determined never to relive old nightmares. You know, I just love that character development. You know, and the whole thing at the end here. Because I'm Spider-Man, and when I am around, no one dies. Not even you. Because he doesn't let Goblin die.
Yeah, it's not how I do things. And again, I love the "is it true, is it not" moment where Liz, "Oh my God, it was a mistake. I just tensed up." And I was like, we'll never really know. It's just like when it's like, "Oh, you,
Yep.
I'm gonna talk to you later," and then you see like the Normie is not right because he's got that wide-eyed like look in his eyes.
He's got the Goblin look.
Yeah, and then. The only problem I have with this characterization in Osborn is he's running away on the Goblin train. You know, he's gone, and he's like, you know, the Goblin's gone, but so is the madness. I was like, no, dude, you were an raging, arrogant a-hole before the Goblin juice gave you super strength. Don't lie to us. You were nuts before that.
Yeah. Yeah. And then the final page of this. Thanks for saving us. For a while I thought, no, I just can't imagine a life without him. And then Spider-Man says in his monologue, she loved him. I was wrong. For me to even be here, someone had to die. And we see the vision of Superior Spider-Man as Spidey and the police with Anna Maria walk away, and we have the end. And then they do this real... Go ahead.
I was going to say,
so cool.
Yeah. But again, that's another nod to the Spider-Man No More cover from back in the late 60s, early 70s. Something like that. It's one of the most important Spider-Man comics. But yeah, we get the gallery of covers.
Oh, I love it. I love that they did this. It's so cool. And while Black Cat wasn't in this that much, I'm hoping in the future she will be, now that it's Peter in control. We have this little epilogue thing where, you know, actions have consequences, and MJ and May and J. James. That's another thing I'll tell you right now. I want Aunt May to be happy, but I'm not sure moving on to be married to J. Jonah Jameson's father is a storyline that I like for Aunt May. I don't know. It's a little weird to me, but it is what it is.
The old girl deserves to be happy, and
true.
I still love from like where he first finds out that Jonah is technically Junior. And he was a J. Jonah Jr., J. Jonah Jr.
Yeah.
It's just one of my... I love that moment. And we have this, epilogue story here. Christos Gage, Will Sliney on art, Edgar Delgado on color, and Chris Eliopoulos, I think I said that right, as the letterer. And it's the aftermath. The Spider family has come back to NYC from Connecticut. Jay calls Peter on his bullshit, and what the hell, man? And Peter says, I quit working for Spider-Man. I'm gonna make it official. I just I know I don't deserve a second chance, and I will prove myself worthy. And Jay's all right. And then you have Peter getting bitched out by MJ in the, again, Sliney's art, and it's referencing the classic face it tiger, you just hit the jackpot pose. And she's like, I'm sorry, I can't live here anymore. She leaves NYZ for I think about 3 or 4 years and comes back for Tony Stark, because that was a thing.
Interesting.
And we see she basically becomes like the new Pepper Potts of a sort, and she's still there. It's just that never considered that before. And then he apologizes. Look, you do you. I understand. You see the press conference where Jonah resigns, and talks a lot of shit to the reporters on his way out. And we see Carly hasn't completely recovered from the goblin juice yet. Like, she's still got like the you're supposed to wipe the makeup off look, like the crusty goblin skin around her eyes, and she's moving to like Florida or something to take time and let the cure work the rest of this out of her system. And as the two great loves of Peter's life, they kind of compare notes, and with Carly Cooper rides off into the sunset, never to be seen or spoken of again. Which is a shame, because
she was a cool character.
I really liked her. And Peter goes to try and apologize to Jonah. He had to speak his piece, and he swings away, and then Jonah's like, "Oh, that would have been great if he had shown up before I resigned."
Exactly.
And in the, again, Amazing Spider-Man Volume 3, Number 1, we see the scene played out from Jonah's perspective, and he's like, "Yes, I'll go back to the Bugle. Proud father returning." And then they see Mayor Jameson resigns in disgrace across the first cover. He's like, "Vultures! Assholes! They never deserved me." And it's like, no one deserves the walking aneurysm that is J. Jonah Jameson. I'm sorry. I love you, Jonah. You don't deserve nearly as much of the bullshit as we give you, but GTFO.
Yep.
And
go ahead.
I was going to say, and that's the end of Superior Spider-Man.
That's the end, folks. As we said, 32 and 33 come into play with Spider-Verse, which will be covered later. As JT said, this was the series finale. I absolutely love it. I'm glad that we went back to it. Goblin Nation on a whole, I'll give the trade a 4.5 out of 5. There were only little bits and pieces here and there I didn't really care for, but overall, I love the way they handled this story. I love the way Dan wrote this. I love what he did with these characters, all of them. Because it's so hard, okay, maybe not for someone who's been writing these characters for 10 years, but in my mind, as a reader and as a fan of the Spider-Man franchise, at least the 616, Peter Parker, Mary Jane, Spider-Man 94 animated series kind of thing, it's like, how do you bring new stories to these characters? And this is why I love this series so much. Putting Otto into Spidey's body completely flipped the script for 31 issues,
Yeah.
And I absolutely love it. What would you give it 0 to 5?
I'd 5. Like, there's no question. This is legit one of my favorite Spider-Man titles of all time. Dan Slott is not a perfect writer, but he's a hell of a writer, and he's passionate about what he does. And I think there is a lot of, despite what the naysayers say, there is a lot of passion on display. Like you said, a lot of people, plots are simplistic and they're not character driven. I was like, and that sort of accusations, you're looking for some sort of think piece or something. Like, supervillains and superheroes fight and shit gets wrecked up and it'll never be the same again. And it's comic books. Like, if you want deep, thought-provoking, character-driven stories, read Image Comics or some very fine publications from other smaller things. But this is a guy who was bitten by a radioactive spider, ultimate lesson in responsibility, and has had an incredibly insane and weird, wonderfully wacky life ever. And Dan Slott got that. I thought he did great.
Yeah, me too. And all of the artists on this series, from Ramos to Delgado to Giuseppe and everybody, absolutely loved all of the work that all of these people did on it. Before we get JT's contact info and all that stuff, coming up over the next 2 weeks here in November, we've got 331 and 332 of the Pullbag. It's a two-parter episode where the comic concierge Dan Movervolt Clark and DJ Valentine from Simplistic Reviews are going to join me as we take Part 1, Issues 1 to 4, and Part 2, Issues 5 to 8 of Batman White Knight. So that's what's coming up here on the Pullbag for the next 2 weeks here in November. Where can the people find you online, sir?
You can find me sporadically on the Comic Connoisseurs podcast with co-hosts Ben Carver and Red Ink. You know, we talk about everything related to and sometimes stuff completely unrelated to comics. You can also find me online, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, at JT from Saskatoon.
Cool. Awesome. I am at TFG and Mike on Twitter. You can follow at the Pullbag on Twitter. Check us out on Facebook as well as going to geekcastradio.com. Make your great escape into comics, and we will catch you next week, folks, when the Joker is the hero and Batman is the villain, or so I've been told. He's a white knight. I don't know. He's the hero the city deserves, not needs. Who knows? We will talk to you next time. Keep on reading those comics.
Oh, yes, but think of the fun.
You've just heard the latest episode of The Pullbag, the GCRN's first comic review and discussion podcast. There are several ways to get in touch with us and leave feedback for the show. You can visit the website, geekcastradio.com, where you can comment on the episode and all of our different podcasts. You can rate and leave a review for the show on iTunes. Be sure to leave us feedback. Become a fan of us on Facebook, facebook.com/thepullbag. Send us an email, feedback at geekcastradio.com. Follow us on Twitter at thepullbag and at geekcastradio. So until next time, make your great escape into comics and unleash the geek in you.